Vincent, that means thank you. Ms. Jayacha, my friends. Chichuratastachi, which means welcome, my friends. My name is Roger Fernandes. I'm from the Lower Elwha Clallam people. Like a lot of the native tribes around here, our names are mispronounced. We're working on that, correcting that. But like Clallam is Clallam County, Clallam Bay. That's the English speakers' way of saying our tribal name. Our tribal name is Sklayam. And I can see where Clallam, I can see where they were going. But our real name is Sklayam, which means strong people. And we're on the land of other people here now, whose name is also mispronounced. But then, that's all right, we've got time. We're not going anywhere. Like this rock, we're not going anywhere. And so I was very happy. I want to add to that introduction. First, I'll make sure you understand I was very happy to work with this organization and the good work that they're doing. But I remember when they asked could I propose some artwork, and I sent in the idea of the rock and some design, petroglyphic designs upon the rock. And I got a letter, an email that said, we got your proposal, and it wasn't what we were expecting. And my heart dropped from here to here. I said, oh no, they didn't like it. The next sentence though said, it was more than we expected, which lifted me up again. So again, whoever did that, I want to find that person knows how to use language to get people. I love that. But I'm an artist and a storyteller, and a lot of what I do now is based on the stories of my ancestors, my people. It is the wisdom of previous generations that come to us through the stories, through the art. And I think, in my own opinion, now that I'm grandpa, we need more wisdom in the world, and we need to rely on our old stories, our ancestors, and our art, all of us. And so I'm hoping this will motivate some of you to go back and say, well, what is the wisdom of my ancestors that we can share with one another and talk at that level? And I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to start with some stories. And I'm going to start with a story that's from far, far, far away. It's the other side of the country. The Lenni Lenape people, who we call the Delaware Indian people. The Lenni Lenape people of the East Coast. They tell this story. I learned this story at a gathering of storytellers, and I learned this story. I asked if I could tell it. The storyteller said, go ahead, it's a good story, simple story. A long time ago, in a Lenni Lenape village on the other side of this country, there was a young boy who went out hunting. As young boys, they were taught to go hunting for your people. So he was gone. For a whole day he was gone, hunting. And he was catching pheasants, and he would tie them to his belt as he caught them. And he was happy because he was bringing food home to his family and to his people. He had done a good job hunting that day. And this is a long time ago. Some things didn't exist in the world at that time. So he came across a big open area, meadow. And in the middle of the meadow, he was getting tired. He'd been hunting and gone all day, and the sun was kind of warm, and he thought he'd rest on a big rock that was sitting in the middle of that meadow. And he went up to that rock and sat down on it, and he was thinking about, well, how long do I have to get home, and who am I going to give these birds to, when he heard a voice that said, shall I tell you a story? And the boy was frightened. There was no one around, but he heard a voice, and he looked, and there was no one there. Well, maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe he heard another sound that sounded like a voice, but whatever it was, he just sat on the rock. And now he was thinking about when he got home, he'd be playing with his friends again, and he'd be helping prepare the dinner that night. And he heard that voice again. It said, shall I tell you a story? And now he was sure he heard a voice, and he looked around everywhere, and there was no one there. Where did this voice come from? And it must be my imagination. He didn't know, but he heard a voice. And he sat there for a little while longer, again thinking about the rest of the day and some of his dreams he had for himself, when he heard that voice again. Shall I tell you a story? And then the boy realized that voice was coming from the rock he was sitting on. And he jumped off the rock and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be sitting on you like that." And the rock said, "That's all right, it happens all the time." But the boy said, "What is this thing you keep saying, a story? What is a story? I've never heard of a story before." And the rock explained how a story is a telling of something that happened. It could have happened a minute ago, a year ago, a lifetime ago. It could even happen in your dreams for something that will happen. But that's a story, a telling of something. And the boy said, I want to hear a story then. Yes, tell me a story. The rock said, "You must understand, when a storyteller tells you a story, you're receiving a gift. And you must pay in kind. And so give me those birds that you have tied to your belt." And the boy didn't think. He untied the birds and put them on the rock that he'd hunted for all day. He gave those birds to the rock, and then the rock told him a story about how time came into being by the first being singing a song in the sky. Told him another story about how moose was once a giant monster. Told him another story about how chipmunk got his stripes. And so the boy was fascinated. These stories are interesting, very interesting, and he loved them very much. But the rock said, "Oh, I've been telling you stories all day. It's getting dark. You better get home before night. You don't want to hear those stories. So you better go home now." The boy said, "Can I bring my people back tomorrow? And can you tell them stories as well?" And the rock said, "Yes, I will tell them stories. But remember, they must bring me a gift. Because I'm giving them a gift, they must pay me back in kind. And so I'll wait for you. Because that's all I do is wait." And so the boy ran home and told everyone about this rock that was telling these things called stories, and how they were just powerful and interesting to listen to. And the rock said he would tell us stories tomorrow, but when you go, you must bring a gift. And so everyone was excited because the boy shared a couple stories that he remembered from the rock. The next day the people gathered, and they all had things they were carrying to the rock. They were bringing baskets and different kinds of food and woven things and sewn things and jewelry. They were bringing things to the rock. And they put the things on the rock. And the rock said, "Then I will tell you stories now, but I'm going to tell you something very important. You are human beings, and this is how you are. Some of you will understand everything I say. Some of you will understand some of the things I say, and some of you won't understand anything I say. This is how you humans are. But I will tell you stories now." And he began to tell stories, and he told story after story that explained the meaning of the earth, the meaning of humans, the meaning of all the things around them. And the people were overpowered by these stories. They wanted more and more and more. And so that rock brought the first stories to the people. And the people began to seek out the stories from other entities that lived in the world as well. And so this is how stories came to the humans. It came from that rock. And so whenever I do work on rock, I remember that story, that these rocks carry stories. Chief Seattle, again, a mispronunciation, Siat, and I know we have some Duhamish people here, that he made a famous speech. You're probably all familiar with it to some degree. The speech he made at a treaty negotiation where he was speaking his own language. He didn't speak English, and he refused to speak the Chinook jargon, I was told. And so he spoke in his own language, a powerful speech that was recorded and then later translated. But the beginning of the speech is, he says, points to the sky. He had a powerful voice. He could be heard, they say, for over a mile down the beach. You could hear him speaking. But anyway, he pointed the clouds in the sky and said, "Yon clouds have wept tears of compassion upon my people for countless generations." Then later in the speech he says, "And these rocks that are at our feet that seem to be dumb to us, they don't exist, they're just rocks." He said, "These rocks love my people. They love the feel of the steps of my people as they walk over the rocks. Love them. The rocks hold the memory of my people. The rocks tell the stories of my people." Now, he was not being poetic. He was being literal to him. These rocks understand my people. These rocks love my people. These rocks are living entities that are not dumb. They have stories to tell, and they will tell stories of my people and your people as time goes on. So whenever I work on a rock project like this, I remember those kind of wisdoms that come from our ancestors. And so I will tell you another story. Now this story doesn't come from right here, as the other one didn't. It comes from a little bit closer, across the mountains, like the Yakima area. But I've heard my teacher, one of my elder teachers, told this story in our version. And I'm going to go with the Yakima version because it's a little easier to tell. I'm going to come to a part where I'm going to ask you to help me. That helps you remember the story, if you help the storyteller. So you must promise me that you will help me no matter what I say. You will help me and do the thing I'm going to ask you to do. I got that? Very good. All right. Now, this main character in the story is Coyote. And Coyote lives on the other side of the mountains, but he works his way over here every now and then. And we know some of his stories, we know about him, but we have other animals, Blue Jay and Mink. They do all kinds of powerful things, and they're also very smart and they'll play tricks on people. And so this is a coyote story from across the mountains. A long time ago, Coyote was walking across the prairie. Big miles and miles of grass, miles and miles and miles, as far as you could see, just flat land covered in grass. You know that place is over there, right? Well, he was walking and walking and walking. And the sun was hot and he was sweating and walking, he was getting tired, and he'd look ahead and, oh my gosh, when does this end? It's just miles and miles of prairie. But he kept going. Another day and then another day, looking ahead. Oh no, when's this going to end? And one time he looked ahead and he saw a rock way off in the distance. And you could see that something was moving at the top of the rock. So he went all the way to that rock. And sure enough, it was a big rock, and on top of the rock there were some people. And Coyote said, "What are they doing up there?" And he climbed to the top of the rock and he watched the people. The people were talking to the rock. The people were singing to the rock. The people were giving food to the rock. The people were giving presents to the rock. And Coyote said, "Excuse me, what are you people doing with this rock?" And the people said, "Oh, Coyote, this is a very powerful rock that takes care of us all the time. And we're going on a long journey, and we're asking the rock to protect us on our journey." Coyote said, "You guys are crazy. This isn't a rock. A rock can't do anything. It's just a rock." And they said, "Oh no, Coyote, this rock always takes care of us. When it's hot in the summertime, we sit in the shade of the rock and we stay cool. When it's raining, we climb under the rock. It protects us from the rain. It keeps us dry. When it's cold in the wintertime, we climb under the rock and build a fire. We stay warm, so this rock always takes care of us. And we're asking it for its protection on our journey." Coyote said, "Come on now, it's just a rock, and a rock can't do anything." But the people didn't listen to Coyote. They kept talking to the rock and singing to the rock, giving food to the rock, giving presents to the rock. And Coyote said, "Well, if you can give it a present, I guess I can give it a present too." And he was wearing this dirty old blanket. He never washed it. It was all raggedy, full of holes, and it smelled really bad. He took off the blanket. He said, "Well, I'll give it my blanket." And he put the blanket on the pile of presents. Well, then the people finished their ceremony. They went off on their journey. And the Coyote left too. And he was going the other way, walking along. And he was talking to himself, "Those are the craziest people I've ever met. I mean, talking to a rock and giving it food. I mean, that's crazy. Whoever does?" And just then, it started to rain. And Coyote said, "Oh no, it's raining. I'm getting all wet. I wish I had my blanket." "Well, you know what? That rock doesn't need my blanket. I'm going to go back and get it." So Coyote went back to that rock and climbed to the top of the rock and took the blanket off the pile of presents and put it back on. He said, "There, I'm nice and dry now and warm too. And the rock's not going to eat this food." So he ate up all the food. "And the rock doesn't need all these presents. I'm going to take it with me." So he got a bag and put all the presents into the bag. And then he left again. And he was walking along the prairie talking to himself, "Oh, these are so nice. I'm glad I met those people because I was wanting one of these." And just then he heard a noise. Something big was making noise behind him. And he looked back and something was coming. You know what it was? It was the rock. And the rock was rolling right towards Coyote. And it was coming. And Coyote said, it's getting closer. And it looks really mad. I'm going to get out of here. And he started to run. But as Coyote ran, the rock rolled faster. So it's rolling faster and faster. Coyote's running and screaming, somebody help me. But when anyone saw that rock coming, I can't help you, and they would start running too. So the rock's rolling towards Coyote, coming closer and closer. Coyote screaming, somebody please help me. The rock is rolling faster and faster. Now it's almost on top of Coyote. And the rock said, Coyote, I'm going to crush you. I'm going to turn you into a rug. Please, somebody help me. And the rock just about to roll over Coyote when Coyote sees a little hole in the side of the hill and jumped that little hole just as the rock would have crushed him. Now the rock is covering the hole, and Coyote's in this little hole and the rock's covering it, and he tries to push the rock off, but the rock is so heavy he can't move it an inch. And then the rock says, Coyote, I'm never going to let you out of there. You're going to starve in there. You're going to die in there. I'll never let you out. Coyote says, oh no, I am stuck in a little hole and I can't get out now and I'm going to die. I'm going to starve in here. And he starts to cry like a coyote. Ow! And then he hears these little voices. Hey, who's crying in here? Who's making all that noise? Coyote says, it's me, Coyote. Who are you? We are the Bat People. This is our home. This is our cave. But what happened to our door? Our door is gone. And Coyote says, oh, I was just walking along, minding my own business, and this big rock started chasing me, and it chased me to this hole, and now it's covering the door, and we can't get out. We're going to die in here. We're going to starve and die in here. The Bat People said, oh no, Coyote. We're the Bat People. We have many powers. We can take care of this rock. You better back up and get out of our way. So the Bat People started to fly around the cave. And as they flew around the cave, they went by the rock. And when they went by the rock, they made a noise. And it sounded like this. They flew around the cave. They went by the rock. They made another noise that sounded like this. They flew around the cave. They went by the rock. They made another noise. And what is that noise? Where's the little kid? The little kids know what that noise is, right? Come on now. What is that noise? It is flatulence. There's another word, but we run a decent museum here, all right? So there's another, but this is the part you will help me with. When I say the Bat People flew around the cave, went by the rock, they made that little noise, I want you to make a little flatulence noise. And I know you all can do it. Some people say, oh, I don't do it. Yes, you do. And if you maintain that, we will know you're silent but deadly. So, when I say that, I want you all to make just a little. We have enough people, we can cover it up. Obviously, you hopefully you understand our native people didn't have some of the issues around bodily functions that we modern people might have. These were integral to many of our stories. So, be like an old Indian. Make a flatulence noise. So, the Bat People. Now, I could never do this one. It's kind of cold for this anyway, but if you can do that, my hat's off to you, all right? So, the Bat People around the cave, they went by the rock, they made that little noise. So, make that little noise. So, here we go. The Bat People flew around the cave, they went by the rock, they made that little noise. Very good. And when they made that little noise, a chip of rock flew off. The Bat People flew around the cave, they went by the rock, they made that noise again. Another chip of rock flew off. The Bat People flew around the cave, they went to the rock, they made that noise again. Then the Bat People said, bah, you better back off, Coyote, we're going to make our biggest noise. So I want to hear your biggest noise, all right? So the Bat People flew around the cave, they went to the rock, they made their biggest noise. And this time the rock exploded. The rock blew up. There are chunks of rock flying everywhere. Now, Coyote could get out of the cave. And he climbed over the big chunks of rock laying around, and he said to the rock, I told you not to mess with me. And then Coyote went on his way. And that is a story called Coyote and the Rock. I usually tell that, I learned that one a long time ago, but it helped me quite a bit as we talk about, well, what is a rock? It's just a rock, and a rock can't do anything. Well, let me tell you this story, all right? And so again, the story helps us to understand some things that are beyond what the story is. Within any story that you hear, there's many, many things happening under the surface of the story that are very powerful. They have meaning. And so I ask children, one thing we can learn from Coyote is what not to do, okay? Don't, whatever he does, don't do it. And children say, well, that's good. And that is good for them to be able to tell you what is right, but also what is wrong. And so again, this story allows them to point out he was lying, he didn't have respect for the people, he took back his gift, he did all the things that they know they shouldn't do. And the story allows me to, and plus they get to make a noise that I always tell them, look, this is the only time anyone's going to let you make this noise in school, okay? So you better do it now. And they really get into it at that point. So the story's in our teachings, but how rocks come into this, my people, the lower Elwha people from across the water near Port Angeles, outside the Elwha River, there is a big rock. In our story, a being, his name was Hyas. Hyas is what we call the changer. He's the one who prepared the world for humans. Before humans came to the world had to be made ready. And the first thing Hyas did, or Stokwal did, or Dukhobak did, they have different names according to tribe, they created salmon and put them in the rivers. And so there's those stories that we have that this is the order of the world and this is how you're going to live in the world. The salmon were created first. They're the most powerful gift to our people are the salmon. The most powerful gift to us all are the salmon. And so you might notice in some of the designs I have here, there are references to stories. But the story of our people, we were created by Hyas. He took the mud and dirt from the banks of the river, and there was a big rock in the middle of the river, and there were some holes, pits in the rock, holes, bowls, and he put the mud in there and began to knead it until he was able to create the first humans. He made our people in that rock, in that river, using the earth that came from that river itself as well. And so that is an important part of our story, our identity of who we are. And so when I did this rock, it was a lot of that intention behind it, but I also had a lot of help from various people that knew how to carve rocks, because I did this project and other projects, and I learned enough about rock carving to know I'm not a rock carver. But I am a human being. And for how many human eons and generations have our ancestors taken one rock and pounded a design into another rock, leaving their mark of their spirit, of their story, of their people, of their history, leaving a mark of some connection to the world and the universe around them. And so I said, well, I can do that part. And so I was very fortunate in having a teacher who had an elder teacher, a Japanese man who was a master stone carver, who taught him what he taught me about carving rocks, because I didn't know anything. I tried to carve a rock by pounding a rock into a rock. In 4 days, I made a line about this big. So he said, well, I have these chisels. And then later, and I'm going to introduce the man who at this project said, I have a grinder and I have a diamond crusted grinder thing that you can, so I've learned as I've gone along. And I'm not going to go on too big a diatribe against technology because it helped me a little bit there, a lot actually. But his teacher taught him some things that were very important that I want you to understand that went into this rock. First, his teacher said, you must understand this rock is already perfect. It doesn't need any embellishment on your part. It's already perfect the way it is. So don't get carried away trying to do all these fancy things with this rock. Appreciate it for its perfection and work within that perfection. And so I said, well, that's good, because I told people, if you coming to watch me carve this rock think you're going to see Michelangelo carving the Pietà, that's not what's happening here. This is a human being pounding old ancient designs into a rock. I hope I maintained the integrity of this rock. It was already perfect. A quick story about finding the rock. again, let me finish. Because he said he and his teacher would go up into the mountains, Cascade Mountains, up because that's where the rocks are born. He said that's where we're looking for the baby rocks. They're only a few million years old. We're looking for the babies, and we're going to bring them back here and we'll carve them and work on them. And so he said they'd go up there to the mountains and they'd walk around looking for rocks, following the rivers. And he said they would be going down a river. He said my teacher would find a rock and he'd pick it up and he'd carry it maybe 10, 20 feet down the river, put it back down. He said, there, I just saved that rock 10,000 years on its journey from the mountains to the salt water. And so when this rock I found at a place called Marinaco's Rock Company, I guess it's a company, rock. Anyway, I was looking for a certain rock of a certain size, available surfaces to carve with, and it was hiding from me in this field of rocks. It was behind some other rocks, and I was going back to my car after looking at all these other rocks, making notes and taking pictures, and I saw it and I walked with it, and the right size. Wait a minute, I proposed having a bench. It always a bench that someone carved into it. This is the rock, and it was trying to hide from me. Okay, well, here I am. And again, I'm not enough of a rock person to know that this was a certain kind of rock that's very, very hard. They called it mountain granite or igneous, I believe they said it was. Very hard rock, and I think they were telling me because it's not going to be easy to carve. But when I got here, the first thing I did was get my chisel out when nobody's around and start hitting. Oh, it's carving, it does. All right. But then after a while, after a month or so of working on the rock, with his permission, one day it started to blunt my chisels very fast. And then I was shown by a person I'll introduce in a little bit, this grinder. And I also had a power hammer that used me a chisel. Okay, I'm not the traditional rock carver you thought I was, and or you might have thought I was. And I used that chisel this same day that was blunting my chisel, and it got stuck, and the rock hammer, the electric hammer, blew up. I said, whoa, I could have been killed, but it was, the rock is telling me you're done, all right? Leave me alone. Thank you for bringing me a few miles from my destination, the salt water, but you're done now. And I said, okay, I'm done. But I guess all of that leads to the point that a couple things I want to do very quickly. First is, again, to thank the museum for entertaining that idea and going with the idea, and understanding the stories and the designs. They can blend together, and the stories and designs of the plants that are behind us, they can go together as well. And then I also want to thank them, but I also want to thank a couple people who stepped forward and helped me a lot. I don't know how I would have got this rock here, really. I thought it was just a rock. A rock is just a rock, can't do it. Well, this rock is very heavy. It turns out, the guy said, it's about 5,000 pounds, it's 2.5 tons. So how am I going to get this down here? I only have one person I know who might be able to help me figure, and that's Jeremy Tennell. Jeremy, can you stand up just for a minute? And he helped in such a way I didn't have to worry about moving the rock from the mountain here. That he said, I got it, I know what to do. But one of my favorite stories is Jeremy said we got to get a loader, right? And move it. And so when we got here, a lot of the museum board and people were here, which is a little nerve-wracking to have people watching you work, like with a big giant rock. But it was wonderful. And we got the loader and got it into it was on a pallet, which I don't know how the pallet didn't get crushed, but it didn't. And then Jeremy's trying to get it so that it's balanced and he can lift it off of the flatbed by the pallet and lift it up, only it's out of balance. And I don't know anything about any of this stuff, but Jeremy looks at me and says, don't look at the audience, don't look at the crowd, but is the back of the loader in the air? And I said, yes, it is. He said, this is a heavy rock. And so he readjusted, got it again, and the next time he got it up and he was lifting it up, the flatbed was still connected to his truck, and then the truck back wheel started to lift into the air. This rock was putting up a fight, and fortunately balance won out, and we were able to place the rock here. And the good thing about that is this rock is not going anywhere. This rock is here for quite a while. And we'll always remember that this rock will carry the stories of this project, this museum, this community, these people. It will carry those stories. How we access them, that's kind of on us. The rock contains them. Like that story, let me tell you a story, this rock can tell us stories. And so I appreciate all the board members were here on a regular basis, encouraging me and asking questions. But there was one person in particular. Is Ross still here? Ross Bear Slag Benson, yes. He showed up and just was watching, and I was kind of used to that. But he watched and asked a couple questions, and he said, "Well, I have a diamond crusted grinder and a grind." And can I show you what can do? And I said, sure. Like the other guy said, can I show the chisel can do? And he showed me, and oh wow, look at that. And he allowed me. I always take that as a box. So I would have recognized it. Generous person to bring me some of the things he knew about carving a rock. He had that. So this rock, somebody 5 minute sign or something, has that happened yet? 5 minutes? No? Okay.
Got about 15.
Rock gave the sign.
Rock, paper, scissors. I know which one I'm choosing. Okay. We're good now? How much was?
Another hour.
Okay, all right. A long time ago. So actually,
No, so you can
wrap it up, kind of. Okay.
do what you'd like.
Okay, all right. For whatever reason, this story, when you begin to carry these stories in your heart from your ancestors, they're with you all the time. They're not in a book, they're not in my cell phone, they're in my heart, in my spirit. And so therefore they would be in yours if you learn the stories of your ancestors. Not the immediate stories, but the ones a long time ago. Those are the ones that are full of wisdom and knowledge that I think we're hungry for today. But every now and then you're doing something and a story will say, tell me. Like that coyote story with the flatulence in it. Tell me. It's about a rock. But for whatever reason, I'm going to close with this story. This was told by my another teacher. His name is Johnny Moses. And Johnny tells a lot of different stories about different plants, and their plants are very powerful. One of my primary teachers would always say, the plants are our greatest teachers. The plants are our greatest teachers. They've lived here way longer than we have. They've learned so much about living in this world in a harmonious way, in a good way, that they can teach us medicine, food, fiber. They can teach us all these things if we learn to sit and listen to them and let them speak in their own way to us. And so again, he would always tell those kind of stories. So I'm going to tell you a story about one of the plants that we all know here, the cedar tree. Cedar tree is called the great gift giver by our people because from the cedar tree, our canoes, our houses, our clothing, baskets, ropes, nets, everything come to this one tree. And cedar tree is generous and powerfully a model for us to remember generosity, and giving is more important than receiving. And we're in that season now. I was taught when I was a kid that Christmas is more important to give than to receive, and I've carried that my whole life. Cedar tree lives it every day. So cedar tree story. A long time ago, way, way, way out in the woods, there was this big, old grandma cedar tree. Grandma cedar tree was very, very big. She was very old, the biggest and oldest of all the trees. One day she saw a little tree growing next to her. A little seedling was growing, and she looked, and it was her grandson. Her little grandson was growing right next to her. And oh, she was so happy to see him growing next to her, and she loved him so much. She watched him every day. And as you know, little plants and little trees grow very quickly. So he was growing every day. One winter day, a big windstorm came in. And the wind was blowing so powerfully, so hard, all the trees were rocking in the wind, pouring rain. The wind was howling. Powerful storm. The wind was blowing so hard that little tree was bending in the wind. He was too little. He could not stand up against this powerful wind. And the wind was blowing and blowing and blowing so hard, and he was bending and bending and bending in the wind. And if the wind kept blowing this hard, he would break and he would be gone. So Grandma Cedar Tree saw this, and she put her hands, her branches like this, her hands, and protected him from that hard wind. Well, he grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And one summer day, oh, the sun was so hot. Everyone felt like they were cooking in the sun. They were all miserable. Everyone felt terrible in this hot sun. And that little tree was so small, he could not take the heat of the sun. It felt like he was on fire, like he was burning. It hurt him so much. Grandma Cedar Tree saw this, so she put her branches over him and made shade to protect him from that hot sun. He grew bigger and bigger and bigger, and deer loved to eat the growing parts, little growing green parts of little plants like that tree. That's what they loved to do. And one night the deer were coming toward that little tree, and they were going to nibble and eat the green parts, and if they ate too much, they might hurt him. Grandma Cedar Tree saw the deer coming towards her grandson, so she waved her branches and chased the deer away. He grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now he was the only little tree around this part of the woods. All the other trees were big and old, and sometimes they couldn't see him and they couldn't hear his little voice, and so sometimes he felt alone. Nobody saw him or could hear him, and he felt alone. He wished he had a friend, but no one was there, so he felt sad and lonely, and Grandma could feel in his heart he was sad and lonely. So she used her power, and she called the birds to him, and the birds flew to him. They sat in his branches, they sang to him, they talked with him, and he didn't feel alone. Well, he grew bigger and 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 bigger, and now he was bigger than his grandma. He was the biggest tree in the forest now, even bigger than his grandma. Another winter day came, and the wind was blowing so hard, all the trees are rocking in the wind, the howling wind, the pouring rain, and Grandma was so old now. She could not stand up against this wind anymore. It was too powerful, and she was bending and bending and bending into the wind, and if the wind kept blowing this hard, she would break and she would be gone. So, do you know what he did? He put his branches between his grandmother and the hard wind and protected her from that hard wind. Another summer day came where the sun was so hot. Everybody felt miserable. The sun was so hot they felt like they were cooking in the sun. And Grandma, she was so old now. She could not take the heat of the sun. It felt like she was on fire, like she was burning in the sun. And her grandson saw this, and he put his branches over his grandmother and made shade to protect her from the hot sun. Even old trees like Grandma, they still grow green parts. And one night the deer were coming towards Grandma. They wanted to eat and nibble those green parts for their food, but Grandma was so old now. She couldn't stop the deer. She couldn't lift up her arms or branches anymore. She was too old. She couldn't stop them. Her grandson saw the deer coming towards his grandmother, and he waved his branches and chased the deer away. Grandma was very old now. All her old relatives, they died, they were gone. All her old friends, they died, they were gone. And Grandma missed them so much. She was so lonely, thinking and missing her old relatives and friends. She was so sad. And her grandson could feel his grandmother was sad. So he used his power and he called the birds to her. And the birds flew to her. They sat in their branches. They talked with her. They sang to her. And she didn't feel alone. Grandma said, "Grandson, I am very old now. You don't have to worry about me anymore. Don't think about me anymore. Take care of yourself. Don't worry about me. Just let me go now, grandson. I'm very old now." And he said, "Grandma, when I was little and the wind was blowing so hard I might break, Grandma, you protected me from the hard wind. Grandma, when I was little and the sun made me feel like I was on fire, like I was burning, Grandma, you made shade and protected me from the hot sun. Grandma, when I was little and the deer were coming to eat me, Grandma, you chased the deer away. Grandma, when I was little and I felt sad and lonely, Grandma, you called the birds to me and they sang to me and talked to me so I wasn't alone. Grandma, you did all these things for me when I was little, but now that I am big, I will do them for you." And that is a story called Grandma Cedar Tree. This is how much that tree loves us. All these plants love us and want to teach us things. So I put my hands up. This means thank you in our native way. Thank you to the museum and the board and all the people who are involved in the organization who are involved to bring this garden here so we can tell the stories of how much these plants love us, because maybe we'll learn something from that. They give us food, medicine, fiber. They ask for nothing in return. Our people say this is how we should live in the world. Giving and giving and giving and expecting nothing in return. So again, I put up my hands up all of you for being here today, letting me share some of these teachings with you from my people. I'm happy to hang around the rock for a while if you have any questions about it. Again, this means thank you in our way. So thank you again for being here. This gesture we learned from the cedar tree. If you look at the cedar tree, you'll see its top branches are like this. Our people say, look at the cedar tree. It's giving thanks every day. The great gift giver who gives us everything, it gives thanks every day. We must give thanks every day. So we say thank you to the cedar tree, and thank you to the museum and the organizations and all of you here. Thank you, Hutningson. Thank you, Niskayacha, my friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. You always make me cry with these stories.